Welcome to Startup Stories, where we go behind the scenes of some of the most interesting and innovative tech startups in the world. Each episode will bring you in-depth interviews with entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their personal stories on success, failure, and everything in between. So whether you're an entrepreneur yourself or someone that's just generally interested in the world of startups, then Startup Stories is the perfect place for you to gain insight and inspiration into some of the most exciting players in the game. So sit back, relax, and join us on a journey of startup stories. Hi, Auri. Welcome to the Startup Stories podcast. How are you?
Hello, Jordan. Thank you for inviting me. All well over here. It's sunny.
Great to hear. Pleasure to have you. If you could give me a brief introduction to who you are, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. My name is Auri Jana. People call me Auri. I'm based here in Berlin. I come from India. I came to Berlin about 12 years ago for work, and it's been interesting journey so far. Recently, I had a couple of kids, 2 daughters, as well as another child that basically last year joined a couple of friends in a startup called 60FPS GmbH, based here near from Berlin in Brandenburg. And exciting times. We are startup life. What can I say?
Sounds like you've got a lot going on. You've got your startup, you've got your kids as well. It's all at once, but why not do it all at once, right?
Yeah, while we still have the energy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what I do like to do, Auri, is run it back. So I want to really get to know you properly. So if you could take me back to your earliest memory, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say that I grew up in India in a place called Darjeeling, which is I think a lot of people know for its tea. And we grew up in the foothills of the Himalayas, and I recall it was very green. It's a very nice place to be. So I can completely kind of still close my eyes and relive my childhood over there, among the tea gardens. And if you go up in the hills, it used to be foggy. It was a completely different feeling between the foothills and the hills. It was something that reminds me. Even now, when I sometimes go to the mountains, even here in Europe, and I smell pine wood, it reminds me of those times.
Amazing. Yeah, it's nice to have those little reminders, stuff like that. So, are you an avid sort of hiker now?
I haven't had the chance, but as a kid, we used to go quite often, almost once, twice a year. We used to do hiking, and as a kid, we used to do a lot of camping. But yeah, I haven't had the chance here in Europe. Unfortunately, in Berlin, the mountains are not so nearby. It's pretty flat.
No, other end of Germany.
Yeah. And my wife, she used to stay in the Netherlands for a long time, and Netherlands, as you know, is pretty flat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since the time we have had kids, we have had the chance to at least go for at least one holiday to somewhere in the mountains, and either in Bavaria or in Tyrol in Austria. But yeah, with kids, hiking is a bit difficult. But yeah, that's something I really like.
Well, what a great place to grow up, the Himalayas. I mean, for people that are from Europe, that's a destination to go just to do the hikes and stuff like that. And, costs a lot to go there. But for you, that's where you grew up. What a beautiful place to come from. Do you remember what you were like as a child? Meaning, how would you have described yourself when you was a child?
I haven't had questions so far. Well, I think I was curious. I was somehow my mom would say I was not somebody who would listen to rules or would follow rules or listen to authority. But I guess otherwise, I was pretty curious. I used to like outdoors. I still like outdoors. Some things came naturally to me. I think one thing that I'm really bad at is hand-eye coordination. Which means any sport that requires hand-eye coordination, I'm really bad at it. What a bummer. But otherwise, Yeah, it's really like outdoors and a lot. I think I also got introduced to computers quite early on. I think that was a professor, and he had this small little keyboard that you could hook up to a cassette player and actually load programs, which was, I think I was like maybe 6, 7 years old. Very, very. It was like, what is this thing? I think that's where I got interested in technology early on.
Yeah, it was very early. What would you say life was like growing up?
I would say um, quite easy. We grew up in a place where, as I described, we were in the foothills of the mountains in a university campus. So there was a lot of freedom. You could just go around. I mean, nowadays, later on when went to the city, I even do my kids. When my kids go out, I tell them, be careful, do this and do that, don't do this, don't do that. But I feel when I was growing up, in the safe environment, there weren't any much restrictions. I could just go out during the day and stay outside the whole time, and without my parents being too worried. And even as a kid, when we grew up, we grew up with people who were, yeah, among academia, so they were like professors and whatnot, and it was a very and the interaction was mostly a lot to do with intellectual, where hopefully I got something from that. But even apart from that, I think the good part was that we grew up with people with kids that were of similar age, and we used to have a fairly vast. Our group was fairly big, from kids from who were early teens to toddlers, and we were somewhere in between. So very interesting mix of people, and I guess we developed some sort of relationship with all of these people, which we carry even now. I mean, most of these, this whole group is spread outside everywhere around the world, and we still are connected, which is a good thing.
Absolutely. Who would you say had the biggest influence on you growing up?
I think parents do, of course, have a strong influence. I think we grew up in an environment where the rest of the family was not in the same place as we grew up, right? So we used to go to our grandparents and the rest of the family during holidays, but on a daily basis, and a lot of influence from my mom, a lot of influence from my dad, and I think generally people around, but our neighbors and whatnot. But as I said, it was an environment where our neighbor was a famous professor in physics, for example, and you could that person would when I was a kid, he would talk about supernovas and whatnot, which for me as a kid would not make sense, but it was interesting to hear a perspective. So I developed a lot of understood that it's nice to see perspective, because a lot of things it was not possible to grasp, but you had this thing about people who could see things in different perspectives. So a lot of people influenced that. And then at school, I would say a lot of teachers did. So I studied in this Salesian school called Don Bosco. They're a Salesian Catholic group where they are pretty famous for establishing educational institutions. And I think a lot of influence, on life education, how to conduct oneself comes from school, from those years at school.
When you were growing up, did you can you think of a time when you thought what job you wanted to do?
No, I think for the very longest time till I was pretty much an adult, I always wanted to be a pilot. But somehow that never happened. I'm still looking to to go through the test to get a pilot license, but something always comes up.
Never too late. Too late.
Yeah, maybe I should be a bit more yeah, should prioritize that. But yeah, I always wanted to be a pilot, and I ended up being doing something else. But hopefully, I can pursue that in the future as a hobby or something.
Yeah, sure. Why not? What was your first ever job?
We used to have these different festivals where mom used to put up a stall, so I would get paid for helping her out, which was for us a very good way to earn pocket money. But I think as still in terms of an actual job, I think it was pretty much after graduation, after graduating from college, I landed up. My first job was at Nokia. Back in 2006, which at the time Nokia was one of, probably the biggest one by far in terms of mobile phone manufacturer. It was exciting to also join that company because I feel that I learned a lot from. So Nokia has a very typical Finnish culture, which is very egalitarian, and I learned a lot from that. So a lot of influence, I would say, comes from Finland somehow. And interestingly, until last year when I quit my to join my friends, pretty much I have worked with Finnish employers.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Can you think of a pivotal moment in your life that has made you the person you are today?
I would say that I think my very first. The very first time I could interact with the computer, I was like, wow, what's this? And my interest in software came pretty early on when I was in class, I believe in class 2 or class 3, which is when I was, about that 6-7 years age. Was very, very curious. I was, at the time, it was very difficult to get hold of a computer. They used to be very, very expensive, as compared to what people would earn. I mean, I got very early on. I got interested in programming, not as per se programming, as per se of thinking about algorithms to solve things, because with physical things you need it's a bit different. You need practice. You need to understand how things can be done, fit into a particular way, how problems can be solved. But with software, you could solve problems by thinking, which I think that was a turning point, because I think since then I always thought that I would. I think that changed my attitude towards my introduction towards software. It was not. I felt it was always there. Something I'm good at since as a kid.
How old was you when you discovered that?
I believe I was like about 7 years of age, I think.
Oh wow, okay, so very early on. And do you know what the prices of computers were back then, when you were saying it was really expensive?
The one that one was a ZX Spectrum, which was like just a keyboard, right? Those were not that expensive. They used to be like I believe they were like 8-bit microcontrollers or 8-bit chips. But the first proper computer, I would say, was an IBM. Was it an 80? I think, I think the 80s came before the XTs, and this was when I was around 8 or 9 years of age. We used to have this huge 5.5-inch floppy disk that you had to put in. If you did. If you shook it too much, then the data would go away. So you had to be really careful with it. The very first time I started, I think the very first language per se was a language called Logo, where you had a turtle in the middle of the screen where you had to draw different shapes. And now that I think of it, it was very, very simple. But as a kid, that you could instruct something, a machine, and it would do something as outcome of the instruction was very fascinating. It's very fascinating.
So you told me about your first career being a proper career at Nokia. You was there for just over 6 years from what I can see here, and then you moved on to SourceBits. Walk me through. I'm really intrigued about this transition where you've, of course, been living in India, working in these two companies, and now you're making the transition to move to Berlin. Tell me all about that.
Around that time, around when I moved to Berlin, just before that, I met my wife back in India, and she was moving to Netherlands to pursue her master's. And I figured out, okay, it's going to be really difficult with a different time zone to pursue a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured out maybe I needed to find a job, and that's the reason. That's the motivation I had to move out of India to come to Berlin. Of course, yeah, Germany is a different country, still from Netherlands, but at least it was closer than before. And over the course of before we got married, all of those years, there was a lot of traveling between Berlin and Netherlands that happened during the weekend. So I've explored, I think, all possible ways of travel between Berlin and Netherlands during that time.
Mm-hmm. Was it the first time you'd been to Europe?
That was my first time. No, actually not. The first time I was in Europe, I was probably 1 year old, and I have no recollection of.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I have no recollection of my time. I believe Dad and Mom they had been they had been on a trip for a Euro trip for around 6 months or 8 months, but I have no recollection. So in my I would say in my memory, what I can recollect, it was the first time in Europe.
So is that moment for you, is it quite scary, like to go from where you've been living to Berlin in Europe and committing to a life there, totally different culture and ways of working, and of course very far from home? What was that like?
Actually, it was not. It was not. Okay, maybe kind of going back. So as I said, I grew up in this place called Siliguri, which was in the foothills of Darjeeling, and after I completed my my secondary education, which is basically around the age of 15, 16, I moved to Delhi to pursue my higher education. So in India, you have secondary education and higher secondary education, and I did my higher secondary education from Delhi, and it was the first time that I actually moved out of my home into hostel. The school was a boarding school, and I was living in the school hostel. So that, I would say, was a major thing that I did at that point of time, being so young. And after that, I was in Delhi for a couple of years. Then I did my college education in Bangalore. So again, I moved cities. I lived in Bangalore for about 9-10 years, and pretty much I was living. My parents were away, and was like living pretty much on my own. So for me, Berlin was just another city. When you come from India, one has to also think that each of the places that I'm talking about, they have different culture, they have different language, they have a different way of different food. Everything is different. It's like, pretty much if you think in Europe, you're basically moving from one country to the other. It's a very similar thing in India, because I was moving from the east to the north from the north to the south, and so for me, Berlin was just another culture and another language. But yeah, I've done that before, so
yeah, that makes sense.
Scary as such, and the initial things in Berlin was, of course, I had no idea what to expect in Germany. Mm-hmm. For example, I landed up. I think the first day I landed was a Sunday. So I landed. I went to my accommodation, and then I thought, okay, now I need to figure out would like to eat something. So I went out, and everything was closed, because I did not know that in Germany everything is closed on Sunday. So and the place where I was living, or my temporary accommodation, was in a place which was in the center of Berlin, but in a place where there weren't any restaurants, about 100 meters, 150 meters. Berlin now is very different from what it used to be about 12 years ago. it was still, it was not very multicultural at that point of time. It was starting to become, and later on, visually, I can feel that, I've seen Berlin grow up, but I'm very sure people who have lived in Berlin or have been living in Berlin for 20 years can feel more, but I can already feel it having lived over here for 12 years. It was like, okay, that's something new. So yeah, there were those movements, but I think it's really much what you would expect, when you move to a new place and new town or.
Yeah, totally understandable. And so you spent nearly a decade at QT Group, and all of a sudden, in July 2022, or according to LinkedIn, you started your own business, 60FPS, with a few friends. Talk to me about that. Where were you, and where was the moment where you was like, right, I've got this idea, and I want to turn it into a reality? Talk to me about that moment.
It's very good that you asked this question before, because a lot of things that I think we make decisions in life kind of stems from certain turning points or certain behavior we had at childhood. So one of the things that I said is that for me, having set of rules or somebody to report to or something is always has been, let's say, not something which comes naturally to me. And thankfully at QT Group, I was very fortunate to work fairly independently on my own and do things on my own with all of my managers, all the managers that I had very, very, very supportive. And even when I came to Germany, I think it's been a roller coaster ride. So I rejoined Nokia when I came back to Germany, and Qt was part of Nokia back then. It's within a year, Qt got divested from Nokia to another Finnish company called Digi, which then after a couple of years established Qt as a company of its own. And so I've had a kind of a roller coaster ride, a lot of learnings over there. And I was very fortunate also to grow as the company grew. So I started as a software engineer in the R&D department, and ended up being a product director, reporting to the SVP before when I left Qt. And all of that gave me a lot of confidence, learned a lot about the market. I learned a lot about how to position products, how to develop products, how to market products. And at some point of time, I was thinking, what is it that I would like to do for the next 20 years, 25 years until I retire, and where do I see myself? And maybe typical things that you start thinking when you're mid-30s. What do I do next? And while the good part about Qt was that I every 2-3 years I had a new role, which was challenging. So it satisfied my part of myself, which likes to take up challenges. But I could not find the answer to the question: would I be doing this for the next until I retire? And I've always had the urge to have something of my own, where I'm not bound by things. I can just do things on my own. If it's my company, I can grow it at my pace. I can put in more, and then it gives, it would be rewarding at some point of time, right? And I was very fortunate to have met my co-founders. I'm very good friends. Developed friendship over the last decade, and the confidence that we are a good team, that we can work together, that we can create something new, which we can call ourselves our own, and something that the time and energy we invest in, we can reap the benefit later on, and nobody's going to tell us that this is not possible or that is not possible because of whatever reasons. It's for us to decide whether we want to do something or not. So that whole thing about liberty, about freedom, and the ability to take decisions and do things our way, kind of started growing more and more. And at one point of time, we thought, okay, those guys they quit the jobs and started the company before I did. I'd already committed to a new project within the Qt company, and I felt that I'm a type of guy who really wants to finish my commitment. So I stayed back at Qt. I followed my commitment, grew it into a product, into something that was really acceptable by customers. And at some point of time, I thought, okay, now I need to quit to pursue my other other plans, and that was that. So from that perspective, I could really understand that, work with them. I had this I feel I had this connection that I could really use, and that's why last year decided that I'll quit and then join these guys and join the startup. So that was kind of the thinking.
And how was that transition from being in a secure job to taking a leap to running your own business with not knowing 100% if it's going to work? How was that feeling for you?
This was scary. This was definitely scary. I mean, it was just, it's not just a part that's about stability. It's also, as I said, I also had in between two daughters, so that takes a lot of energy. And I was my, the last job that I had at Qt took a lot of my energy. It was really intense because I created a new product, which right from scratch. So being in the process of developing the product to make sure that it has a market fit, to the process of trying to make it successful in the market, grow the adoption, took a lot of my energy. I was so much focused into it, and I started to kind of get a bit exhausted because I had almost three toddlers plus a wife. Which so two daughters, my baby project, which I was trying to grow at Qt, which was basically my work, and then my wife, and at some point of time, it was getting really exhausting, and I felt that I could not continue going at that pace. I had to. And that's when, again, those thoughts came in. Okay, can I continue doing this for the next 20, 25 years? Because, of course, if you are working, you have this. Somehow I don't know if it's, but it's me as when I'm committed to something in terms of work as an employee, I kind of put myself in this pressure situations that I need to meet my target over here, and so all of that was coming in, and I had to think, okay, what should I do? I mean, and quitting was scary because it means that, as you said, that it's not a stable thing, right? And now I have two small kids and I have a family to look after. Plus, the fact is, what if this is not successful? I mean, then what do I do after 2 years? So it was quite scary, and somehow I thought, or I believe that that somehow I made the right decision, because joining a startup was more of a long term. It's like planting a tree. You don't know whether the seed that you're planting in will turn into a big tree, but we have hope. And if you take care of it, then it will grow. But being in the corporate life, where trying to catch up, I felt that those were like running 100-meter sprint every day.
Yeah.
But at the end, one gets exhausted. But there's not. Yeah, of course, there is salary. There is There's a lot of things that perks come with it, but again, it's like running 100-meter sprint every day, and this is more like a marathon, so different scale, I think.
Absolutely, it's a very good explanation as well. So you've been going almost a year now. Is it a year now? When are you celebrating the birthday?
1st of July is when I joined. So it's still a month. Less than a month.
Okay. So yeah, not too long. What would you say what would you put your success down to so far? You've made it to a year now almost.
Yeah, I think a lot of I would have to thank a lot of my co-founders. I think you spoke with Olivier also, probably contact them, and the other guy Simon. I think you should also talk to him. He's a really, both of them are really great guys. I mean, and I think my relationship with them is not just as a co-founder. I mean, I know them personally they've been very good friends and that helped a lot. I mean, quitting Qt and everything, all the benefits and perks that come with it to something which is completely unknown. Had it not been them, I think things would have been more stressful. So they since they were there, I felt pretty comfortable in doing things that I could. So I would attribute a lot of success to them, and a lot actually to my wife. I mean, she has been very, very supportive. I think. It's a very cliche thing to say that the partner support is important, but anybody who has a family with young kids and probably does something completely new, and I believe that that without the support of partners, it would just not be possible to achieve success. I mean, they come with it, with friends and everything. You can just say this is something where they are living the same thing along with you, they're part of the journey. And I got a lot of support from her because she was actually also switching jobs in between. She had joined back after her parental leave, and she had switched jobs. So it was also a lot of new things for her, new challenges, and we somehow, we have been going through that journey and together, which was, and so far it's going good. So a lot of credit to all of them. I think people, I feel that especially when as an entrepreneur you start, or one starts appreciating these personal relationships more, because a lot of things, of course, your dream, what you want to do, you have your thing, but start valuing personal relationships or relationship with people more, because they kind of act as a support system. When it's a full-time job, then it's more job about what your teammates are thinking, what your manager is thinking, what the group strategy is, what the company strategy is. But when you're out of it as a startup, you think a lot about a support structure comes into play, and I'm very, very, very thankful to all of them that they have been there, or they are still there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. It is about who you have around you during tough times or big decisions, and thankful to your wife for being there for the kids, because, as you said, you probably would not have been able to do it if you had to look after them on your own, and also having some good co-founders around you, which makes me think, how essential would you say it is to have that second or third head in the business alongside you?
Well, I don't have much of experience with, I'm not I've not been establishing, not like a serial entrepreneur or something like that. But I would say for me personally, I would not have started a company on my own had I not known that if I would have somebody else to take care of certain other parts. Because when we talk about starting something new, I feel it's like, your hand, there are 5 different fingers, and each one of them is important because they do something which the other fingers cannot. And without having a second or a third head to give in a different perspective, to think, to say, hey, this can be done differently, or even to take care of when you have a company, things that we have had never thought about, which was at Qt, we had the luxury of a marketing team. We were attending earlier this year Embedded World, which is one of the biggest embedded trade shows in the world. And I had to basically take care of the whole organization thing, starting from contacting with the organizers on how our stand should look like and everything. Back with my previous employer, this was taken for granted. We didn't have to do. We just had to think about what we should project, or what sort of what sort of demos we should bring. What should be the messaging story? Those were the high level things that we used to think about, not the organization part. And so, as running a company, there are a lot of things. It's like an iceberg. There are a lot of things below the water that needs to be taken care of. And I feel that with us, we have three people, and a lot of this under the water is basically distributed among the three of us. And if it was just one person, just me, then I don't think I would have been able to do it. I would have failed miserably.
Yeah, it's a very challenging path to go down if you're doing it entirely on your own. Like I myself and business partners with my brother, and I've got friends that have their own businesses, but they're on their own. And they said, I would love to have just a business partner, when you're struggling on an idea and you just don't know what to do, but you can voice it to someone else who may come from it from taking the emotion out of the equation and can actually answer the question logically, because you're quite invested into it. So I do think it's very crucial. And I feel like even if you are a solopreneur, hiring someone quickly to be your right-hand person is also the next alternative. It's someone that's really loyal and look after them and so on. And then, we don't achieve anything on our own, really. When we think about how we grow as a company, we hire people, we have our accountants and stuff like this. Everybody needs someone to grow their business anyway. So, completely agree with you on that. It'd be very hard to do it all on your own.
And that's also, I think, that's where the thing that you mentioned as solopreneurs, it's possible, but you want to bring in people who you trust. So I think that's the trust part, the relationship part is really, really important. That kind of ties all of us. Of course, the vision itself, but on a daily basis, the vision is something which is there at the back of your mind. But to have a working relationship, you need to have this sort of a trust, this sort of something that the other person will take care of, or you don't need to think about it. So that's a luxury, and I think that's really important in order to keep one's focus on things. Otherwise, pretty much the to-do list ends up being everything apart from work, because you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to submit this bill, or you have to pay this or whatnot, and then there's no work done.
So what's been the hardest part of your journey in this startup so far?
I think it's a multitude of things. The typical thing with early startups, I don't think we have a lack of idea. What we typically struggle with is how can we do things better somehow, and we are either tied. We end up basically being tied to time, resource, and priority. So we know that we need to do, let's say, we need to finish a job X. And now that job X is important. Now we have to figure out whether there's time for job X, whether we have the resources, so is somebody available to do it? And the third thing, should it be prioritized? And trying to fit that has been one of the biggest challenges. It might seem easy, but I feel when one is running their own company, when one knows how much money there is in the bank account and how much is possible to do, you start really, sometimes rethinking, okay, can things be done differently, and it's difficult to manage all of that. I think I'm still learning how to do it, and probably sometimes I've done well and sometimes I've not, and sometimes we got burnt. For example, the one of the advantages that we have here in Germany is that we get access to a number of federal grants, but applying for those federal grants takes time. And question is, should I focus my time in getting the grant, or should I focus my time on getting customers? Because I don't have, I can't do both. There's not enough time for it. And there was this one time where I because I was focusing on the customer, I got delayed in submitting for a grant, and that got over, and we did not get the grant. And because we did not get the grant, it means that it hits our operating cash. So it's like always you have to do 5 different things in the same day at the same time, and trying to rationalize it on which one can we do at what point of time, and what we can let go and say it's fine not to do this. It's fine not to do this, and that's been difficult. And this, I would also have to say, goes back to the CEO of Qt. Early on, we were having this strategy discussion when DJ was making Qt as a standalone company, and what I learned from him is that to run a business, it's important to say no. Saying no is more important than saying yes, because if you say yes, you can do everything, but of course you can't do everything. So you have to spend considerable time saying no, even if you lose out on things, and to accept it, saying that, hey, this is great, but this is not for us. And having the right mindset and courage and to do, saying that it is fine, not for us, is something that one learns more when one is running their own business.
Yeah, that's so true. So what are the plans now for 60FPS then?
So we have had we were very fortunate to have commercial customers already. So we are looking forward to our first commercial customer. Actually, they started using the product back in 2021, even before I joined the company. And they are going to production. They're producing the first devices that are coming out with our software. So we're very, very excited to showcase that. And our next step is basically to raise money from investors for the next round. So basically for the next cycle of things. So we have had 3 years already where we created the product. We have a fair amount of traction. We have commercial customers. We have revenue coming in. And for to grow the company to the next level, we need more money. And I think the success stories that we have for the first cycle, I think we should build up and for the second cycle. So a lot of things are going on. So exciting times. We are working on a new website. We are working on a new licensing model. We are working on showcasing the customers that the customers they are going to production. So showcasing all of those success stories and talking to investors to get money. Just the stuff that a normal entrepreneur or startup end up doing.
I hear from talking to other guests that getting the funding is one of the hardest, most stressful parts. Would this be your Series A or seed round, or?
So we had already our pre-seed round. So I would say we're still in the seed thing. I think we have had discussions with various investors. And I feel that having spoken with them, I feel the Series A is, what institutional investors are still looking at. This Series A is when they can, the product kind of rolls on itself. So there's still the amount of risk in product creation is fairly low still in Series A. I mean, scaling up is not possible, but of course there is the product will roll on itself. And I think we are still a year away from that. So most likely we go for a Series A sometime next year, but now we would do some sort of a seed. We did pre-seed, so we would do some sort of seed because we still need to
Yeah.
So we are almost there 90%, but we still need to finish the rest 10%, which typically there's this Pareto rule, right? 80-20. It's usually the last bits that take almost the same time as the rest of the stuff. So still have some time to.
One step at a time, and you're doing the right thing at your pace. So what I want to know is, you've had a great career at Nokia and at QT. You spent a lot of time at both companies. It's about 16 years at the two of them, maybe more. You could have gone on to have a long career at these companies and be well looked after right up into your retirement, and maybe you would have joined another company. I don't know. So what's your real personal motivator to do what you do and the risk that you've taken? What gets you out of bed in the morning to do this?
I think it's the freedom part, that I can do things myself, and there's nobody, I make decisions myself, and the path that I'm creating is something that I'm creating. So I have no one to blame or to, I wouldn't say blame, but it's not, so let me put it this way. If I crash into the wall, then it's my fault. If I don't crash into the wall and if I end up going to a nice place, then it's also my fault. Or it's me. So I think that's kind of really motivates me, is that kind of also challenging myself, right? Okay, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing the right thing? So that's definitely something that keeps me excited, and we don't know the end of the journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I really like your answer, because it's exactly the same as mine. When I started my business, it was for freedom. A lot of people think people start a business for money. Obviously, with more money, logically, you seem to have more freedom. But it's not always. You could work for a company, be earning loads of money as a director of a big company, but you still don't have true freedom. So I think having your own business definitely gives you that, and that was my motivation. So it's nice to hear that yours is similar. So that's really cool. So last question, Auri. If someone's in a similar position to you and they've done 10, 15 years at a company and they're doing really great, but they've got this idea ticking around in their head to perhaps try start up their own business, but they just can't get this thought out of their head. But of course, you're scared to make that jump. What advice would you give them?
I think, in general, I've seen a lot of people through my career that they really come with great ideas. Of course, at their workplace, they might be doing something different where those ideas might not come to fruition. And I think having ideas is perfectly fine. To come out of it and this big step that you said, that, can I come out and basically make my idea a success? I think apart from the idea itself, I would go back to the support structure. So one needs to understand whether there's a support structure for the person to actually operate. Because maybe let's put it this way: the idea can change. You come up with, you start with an idea. Let's say, okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe Jordan, you thought, okay, podcasts are interesting. I want to start my own company. What sort of niche do I do? And you think that you assume at the very beginning, okay, this niche seems good. This is where my audience would actually come from. And you started, but after a couple of months, you change your idea because you now know more and you can actually improvise and slightly alter parts and make it maybe catch another segment of the market.
Mm-hmm.
So per se, from the idea perspective, I would say that people just need to be confident that they can execute. But what's important is the support structure, because you need to be in an environment where, irrespective of whether the idea fails, the idea might fail. So one has to be bold to accept that, or you should be able to alter the idea. But I would say that if people who have had 16 years of experience have an idea, and if they are scared to make the jump, I think people are usually scared to make the jump because they think that the idea might fail. And I would like to say that think of the other way around. Don't think about the idea. Think about do you have a support structure? Because if the idea fails, you will come up with another idea, because ideas are just ideas. I would say it's really unlikely that a person comes up with just one idea, and if it fails, and that person is broken, and suddenly the mind stops working, and there are no more ideas coming. So that usually doesn't happen. If your first idea fails, you will have a second idea, you'll have a third idea, you'll have a fourth idea. So one should not be afraid that the idea will fail. One should be more check for the fact that if they have a good support system, or if they have the good support system, then they should be more they should put their confidence on the support system and say, I'm confident, I have a good support system, and I can do things, and then do it. So, which might be difficult for solo entrepreneurs, but I feel that a lot of people think more about the idea than everything else, and I would like to say that the idea is just a part of other bigger things. So
yeah, and that's a really good answer, actually. To be confident that you can execute. If you're confident you can execute, then why not go for it? Because you'll live in regret for the rest of your life if you didn't give it a try, at least. Thank you very much for that, Auri. I really appreciate that. I loved hearing all about 60FPS. Look forward to following you from afar. Hopefully you get that seed round this year and the Series A next year. As I say, I will be following the journey, seeing how you guys are getting on and building the company. And of course, we'll keep in touch. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan, again. It was lovely speaking with you. And I really look forward to hearing your podcast. So, and likewise, I now follow you also on LinkedIn. So great to have in touch. I mean, one of the things that my friend said, maybe just as a parting thing, is that for entrepreneurs, and I think it was a really good thing. For entrepreneurs, one should listen to stories, because it doesn't matter whether it's a story from a complete entrepreneur in a completely different field, because the problems that we are trying to solve, or problems that people face on a general level, on a high level, are very similar. And listening to others on how they have solved, or what sort of influence they had, and inspiration that they had, that probably can solve one of your problems that you're facing. So really interested to hear what the other people that you're interviewing have to say on their inspiration and their journey. Yeah,
that is so true. Yeah. I myself have been so inspired just by doing the podcast. Everybody I've spoken to, I've learned a little bit of something new, especially when I go listen to them back and really take in it, multiple times. So you're absolutely right with that statement. Appreciate it. Well, thank you, Auri. Take care.
Yeah. Cheers, John. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Startup Stories. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests and learning more about their journey in the startup world. I'll be back soon with another exciting episode featuring a new guest, so make sure to subscribe to Startup Stories so you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media for updates and additional content. And if you have any suggestions for guests or topics you'd like to hear about, please reach out to me. And as always, I appreciate your support and feedback. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.